Welcome to Inspiration and Transformation from the Banks of the Ganga with Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati, an American sannyasi living at the Parmarth Niketan Ashram in Rishikesh, India. Sadhvi is president of the Divine Shakti Foundation, a charitable organization bringing education, vocational training, upliftment, and empowerment programs to women and children. Sadhvi is also Secretary General of the Global Interfaith Wash Alliance and Director of the world-famous International Yoga Festival. Join the musings of an American sannyasi as Sadhvi shares the wisdom and teachings of her guru, His Holiness Pujya Swami Chidanand Saraswatiji.
Welcome everyone to Inspiration and Transformation from the holy banks of the sacred Ganga River in the land of Rishikesh, India. We need to lead a life of minimalism and simplicity in order to live a yogic life. But sometimes the nature of our profession does not allow us to be that simple. How do we handle this? So there's two aspects of simplicity, and they serve two different goals. One aspect of simplicity is for our own spiritual awakening, for our own spiritual connection, realization, transformation. And for that, it's not about what we actually have, what we wear, what we own, what we use. Because the things are not actually that which keep us unrealized. The things are not that which keep us not yogic. That which keeps us stuck is the mind. As it said so beautifully, man eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayo. It's the mind. It's the games of the mind. It's not ki, oh, I have a jacket like this, or a house like that, or a car like this, or a bracelet like that. Those are not the things that actually keep us stuck. As long as we are not stuck with them. And that's the key, is in our minds. Cheez aate hain. Frequently, Kaskar is the person asking the question asked in their profession. No problem. When you play a role on stage, you dress up like all sorts of things. A princess, a king, a queen, a beggar, a villain. But it doesn't mean that you think that you are that person. You understand, I'm just playing a role. There's never been a time that you hear the story of some actor who's playing a villain on stage and actually goes home and kills his family because he forgot acha ye ek drama tha. Never happens. They know it's just a role I'm playing. Cello, I've got this big knife, I've got this gun, but they never go home and use it. They know it's just a prop. And so similarly in our lives, we play so many different roles. If your role has a certain costume or a certain prop that is associated with it, it's a suit and tie, or it's a certain type of clothes, or it's a certain type of car, or a certain type of watch, or whatever it may be, no problem. Just understand these are props in the drama of the role that I am playing. And don't allow yourself to get stuck with them. If an actor has a prop and they show up the next day and the prop has disappeared, They're not going to lose themselves. They're going to say to the guy or the lady in charge of the prop room, Acha, give me something different instead. Not a big deal. They're not going to go home and cry. Oh, my prop is gone. Oh, I loved that. That was my favorite costume. They understand it's just a prop. The problem with us is we get stuck. We get stuck in wanting more and more, nicer and nicer. It's like the actor who would be yelling at the costume person saying, this sari is not expensive enough. Why does the other actor get a nicer sari, nicer bracelet? Well, so they're playing a different role. Their role has the bracelet of this kind, the sari of that kind. Your role has a different one. So don't worry if the profession requires a certain costume or prop. It's fine. But just don't be attached to it. And most importantly, always remember, whether it's for your job, whether it's for your family, it happens also in the family sometimes, that there are certain props and costumes that come along with it, whether it's a house, a car, a certain lifestyle. No problem. But just don't allow your mind to get stuck with it. Don't allow yourself to lose yourself based on what's happening with your props. Whether it's a stock market, whether it's a car, whether it's a house, whether it's clothes, whether it's a profession, whatever it may be. Just recognize they're just roles. However, that's for our spiritual awakening part, the yoga of our own awakening. But there's actually another piece of all of this, which is our responsibility as part of a global family. And in that global family, we have sisters and brothers who are dying of hunger. We have sisters and brothers dying without access to clean water. We have a biodiversity that is being destroyed. We have air that's being polluted, water, soil that's being polluted. A future that is quite literally being stolen from our children and grandchildren. And a huge part of all of that is this man mange more, more, more. This insatiable sense of, I need more, I need more. And especially I need it cheaper, 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 right? When we go shopping, the aim is, I should be able to buy the most, spending the least amount of money. If you say, आज बहुत बढ़िया shopping दिवस था, इसका मतलब है कि मैंने खूब सारे सामान खरीद लिया और कम से कम पैसा खर्च किया. Right? If you buy very few things, but you spent a lot of money, you would not say it was a very good day. You'd say, oh, ज़्यादा पैसा खर्च किया. So our addiction to more, 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 cheaper, 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 is actually what is destroying our environment. Everything we buy is produced somewhere in a factory. And those factories are spewing their waste into the air, into the soil, into the water. And the ones that are providing us cheaper, 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 will inevitably somewhere, they're not in seva. Clothing companies are not apni seva mein hai ki koi baat nahi, nuksan apni jeb se aayega. Lekin aapko cheaper milega. If they're giving it to us cheaper, they're cutting corners somewhere. They're not treating their waste. They're allowing their pollution to spew into the air. Or they're running sweatshops with women and children. slave labor, they've got unsafe working conditions, unsafe chemicals. You think about something as simple as cotton, okay? Now, cotton is what so much of what we have is made of. When we go to a store and we want more and more clothes, cheaper, 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 well, the cotton that those are going to be made of, inevitably, is cotton that is grown in fields with all sorts of toxic fertilizers, toxic pesticides, in which the cotton is being picked by people who are being paid next to nothing, who are working ungodly hours in horrible slave type of labor. And because of the chemicals, they end up with cancer. Their children have birth defects. And those are the factories that are giving us things that are cheaper, cheaper, cheaper. So when we speak about simplicity from a yogic perspective, it also takes us into the yam and niyam of yoga. The very first one of which is ahimsa. And if through my craving, my insatiable craving, women and children are working in sweatshops, the chemicals for my shampoo or moisturizer or soap are being smeared into the eyes of bunny rabbits to test them. Well, that's violence. If due to what I am buying and wearing and using, people are going hungry, that's violence. It's not yoga then. Doesn't matter how good your asanas may be or how long you can do pranayam. If you're not living according to yam and niyam, it's not yoga. And so as I was saying on the Ghat, today is World Vegan Day. And it's a beautiful time to really look at the way that our choices impact the world. Fortunately, I assume everyone sitting here is a vegetarian, a pakka vegetarian. But the meat industry is that which is causing climate change. The single greatest cause of climate change is actually the meat industry. Single greatest cause of environmental destruction, meat industry. It's one of the greatest causes of world hunger, of lack of water. The amount of grain, means rice, wheat, soy, corn, that goes into the production of 1 pound of meat is 16 times as much as goes into the production of a pound of vegetarian food. So if I've got 16 pounds of wheat and corn and soy and rice, I've got two choices. Either I can produce 16 1-pound loaves of bread, 16 pounds of pasta, 16 pounds of rice. I can feed 16 people. Or I can produce 1 pound of meat. And so every time we eat meat, it is literally saying, let 15 other people starve. We actually produce enough grain to feed more than 10 billion people a day. But almost 1 billion people sleep hungry every night. And tens of thousands of people are dying of starvation every single day. And so when we talk about veganism, and we talk about simplicity, and we talk about yoga, and we talk about dharma, they're actually all one. Many people think, well, what I eat is just my personal choice. It's your personal choice if the meat you're eating is your own arm. You want to eat meat? Fine. Cut it off your own limbs. But if what you're eating is coming from animal agriculture, from an industry rooted in violence, then it's not a personal choice. It's a global choice. And so the other side of this yogic simplicity is, as Puja Swamiji always says, live simply so that others may simply live. And that's our duty. And so we go vegetarian, we buy organic, so that the people who are working in the fields are not suffering diseases from the chemicals, so that the chemicals are not entering our soil and our groundwater and our rivers. We buy fair trade, so that the women and the children are not working in sweatshops. And so that's the other aspect of this, is be aware that whatever props you may be accumulating, ask yourself, is it really necessary? Even if you're not attached to it, ask yourself, is it really necessary? Kya main iske bina ji sakti hun? Because you can be pretty sure that from that someone else is dying in some way or being harmed in some way. Whether it's a child dying of asthma in Delhi because of the pollution caused by the factories that are producing your items. Whether it's animals, whether it's children, whatever it may be. Our rivers, our trees, our future. We live simply so that they, today and tomorrow, may simply live.
You're listening to OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Alaya, in the circle on Sunday 2 p.m. Eastern as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
Hi, this is Christina Ricci with RAIN. Every 2 minutes, another American is sexually assaulted. If you or someone you know has been sexually assaulted, you are not alone. Help is just a call or click away through the National Sexual Assault Hotline. Please call 1-800-656-HOPE, that's HOPE, or visit rain.org, that's RAINN.org.
Brought to you by RAIN and this station.
Welcome back to Inspiration and Transformation. I'm so glad to have you all back here with me.
After 4 years, I am sitting over here again. 2018 I came here, met Swamiji and attended your meditation also. And last 2 years, COVID was there. I am a medical superintendent of a very big hospital. It has 1,360 beds. So last 2 COVID phase, I have seen hundreds of people dying. Thousands are recovering. It all happens before my eyes, under my supervision. This really creates a conflict in my mind. So I thought, where should I seek the answer of that? So today is the day, and you have invited a question. I thought I should put before you so that you can answer me, satisfy my quench. Spiritual leaders, so many, since ages, are talking on the power of human being. Some says that human being is so small that it simply doesn't exist. So is the smallness of human being that suppose this whole earth goes off, the whole solar system goes off. It doesn't matter to a galaxy. So who are you? You are a very small being. At the same time, sometimes when I hear Kabir, he says that human being has got immense potential, so big and so small in being utilize. So I am in a state of conflict. What to consider human being, a person, a being of huge potential, and believe that I am big, or I am nobody, I am very small. Please answer that.
Beautiful. Yes and yes. Both. Let's take COVID. You began speaking about COVID. It's a virus. दिखाई तो नहीं पड़ता है. मैंने एक doorknob या कुछ भी चीज, I've touched it. I can look at my hand. I have no way of knowing कि I have gotten COVID on my hand or not. इसलिए everybody sanitizing all the time because we don't know. You touch mud, you know कि there's dirt and I will wash it. या मेरे हाथ साफ है. But viruses, bacteria, we cannot even see them. And yet, इतना छोटे होने के बाद, it has the power. How many lives has COVID taken across the world? A minuscule, microscopic thing. So the size of it, are we large? No. In the scheme, compared to an ant, yes, we are large. Compared to the universe, no. Look at the stars. I mean, even just from an airplane. I've never had the beautiful opportunity to go into space and see the Earth from space, but just from an airplane. You look down and you realize how small we are. As you're landing, sometimes you can see where you live. And you think, my God, one little fight happens in the house and we think it's the whole world. But this house, you can't even see it. So, as in size, we are very small. And yet, as we've seen with COVID, as we've seen with every single bacterial infection that has ravaged humanity, from the plague to flus, I mean, whether it's a virus, whether it's a bacteria, whether it's spread by a mosquito, a rat, water, the things that kill us are not elephants. Way more people die from things that cannot even be seen than from, elephants and giraffes, tigers, or mountains falling on them, right? So, yes, we are very small. And that's a very important perspective to have when we start to feel stuck in our own drama. Oh my God, kya bole mere ko? I cannot believe it. So rude. How dare they? And we get so caught up in our drama, like we are the world. Like everything in the world should stop because this person was rude to us. So it's very helpful, spiritually, emotionally, to realize how small we are. And that's why spiritual leaders of every religion have given teachings for millennia of things like, look at the stars on a dark night. Watch the ocean. Because it's very hard to feel like the center of the universe when you're looking at the stars on a dark night or watching the ocean. You cannot help but realize actually how small our problems are. So on that level, we are very small. And that's very beautiful to know because it's very humbling. We tend to think of ourselves as the center of the universe. And as you say, we can all die out, the earth will be on. But it's so interesting because we talk about saving the earth. Neither can we, nor do we need to save the earth. The earth lived in the Ice Age. The earth will live in a fire age. The earth has no attachment to how much oxygen, how much nitrogen, how much carbon, what temperature it is. Is the water salty or not salty? Is it ocean water or fresh water? We are the ones who have that attachment. We are the ones who can only live in a very narrow frame of temperature, of oxygen, of amount of fresh water that we need. So it's important to remember how small we are in that. But it's also important to remember how large we are. In terms of impact, like the virus has impacted the world in a way that will never be forgotten, even though no one can see it unless you've got a big microscope. You think about how many bacteria are on our body. I forget how many it is, but it's like hundreds of trillions. It's massive. We can't see them. But if you get the wrong one in your skin, it could kill you. So remember that we are large in impact upon the planet and upon the universe. And this is where humans have the greatest potential, it is said. Because humans are the ones who are able to be conscious of themselves. We are able to transcend the calls of the body that say, eat, sleep, drink, have sex, fight. We've got this ability, not just the buddhi is great, but we've also got this other higher aspect of consciousness that is actually able to be conscious of the part of us that is aware that we are getting angry, that is aware that we are having desire, that is aware that we're having temptation, whatever it may be. And because of that ability, which it's believed no other animal has, no other species has, we are considered the most powerful. Because we've got the ability to really understand ourselves and therefore not act like animals. Animals tend to be driven by self-protection. So they eat, they sleep, they drink, they procreate, they fight. It's all about just protection of the self and transmission of genes. But as humans, we're able to see beyond that. And that's why it's said that this is the pinnacle, the highest of evolution. So hold both in your awareness. When you feel like you're the center of the universe, remember you are nothing. When you feel like what you're doing doesn't have an impact, why bother? Remember the power of the virus and realize how powerful you are.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth Radio is conscious living for your soul. every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Like Baldwin with People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I grew up loving circuses and other traveling animal shows, but it never occurred to me what life might be like for the animals. Training wild animals to do things they don't understand takes force. Routine discipline with a hook or whip with the heel of a boot shows the animal exactly who's the boss. Don't patronize animal acts. Please contact People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
757-622-PETA.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with inspiration and transformation. So, first of all, the consciousness of all the living beings, from an amoeba through plant life, through animal life, up to us. हम वहाँ से शुरू करेंगे, फिर आगे बढ़ेंगे. Consciousness exists in all, everywhere. However, the ability to connect with that consciousness varies. The ability to be conscious of consciousness varies. An amoeba, an apple, an earthworm do not have the ability to be conscious the way that we do. Now, I'm going to bring in a part from one of your later questions about the brain, and I'll come back to it also, but what we know is that our brain, our central nervous system, is the way that we experience and understand consciousness. It isn't consciousness. Consciousness is not the gray and white matter of my brain. It's not living in the cells of my brain. It's not living in the chemicals in the vesicles at the end of the cell. It's not living in the myelin sheaths that cover the axon through which the electricity goes. But all of that combined is what enables me to be conscious that I am conscious. And we know that because when people are brain dead or have brain damage, consciousness still exists, but they're no longer able to access it. So, going back for a moment to the different forms of life, consciousness exists, but without the very, very advanced brain and central nervous system, they don't have the ability to be aware of that consciousness. This is why we were talking about veganism and vegetarianism. And one of the questions that always arises is, वो तो कुछ तो खाना है, हवा से तो जी नहीं सकते हैं. Don't plants feel? Don't fruits feel? Isn't that also violent? Now, in an ideal world, we would all be breatharians. But we can't. And so what we do is we eat as low on the consciousness level as possible so that we are causing the least amount of harm as possible. And so we know that an apple is less conscious than a cow. We know that a cucumber is less conscious than a pig or a chicken. And so we eat as low as we can on the consciousness level, because to allow ourselves to die is also violence. We are definitely conscious. So we have to eat something, but we do it as non-violently as possible, as aware as possible. And this is also why we pray before we eat. We pray, we understand that that same divine that lives in me lives in them. We understand that, we bow to that. And we understand कि कुछ तो खाना चाहिए. So there is consciousness, but it is much less. And this is why when we speak about karma and reincarnation, and the idea of moksha. This is why nobody says that an apple can attain moksha or an earthworm can attain moksha. It's not कि वो पाप कर रहे हैं. It's not कि ये तो बहुत, गलत apple है. It's that because they're not able to be conscious, they can't make those choices, have those experiences, have that awareness. देखा जाए तो we are much more papi than an apple is. But we are the ones who can attain moksha because we have that consciousness. So, in a very superficial nutshell, that's that part of the question. Then, Einstein, Puja Swamiji, the rest of us. Consciousness is actually not even separate. It's not like Einstein's consciousness or Puja Swamiji's consciousness. There's just consciousness, like there is soul. The difference is that we each have a different ability to interact with that. So, for example, there is beautiful fresh air. Somebody who is very adept in pranayama, if you put like one of those oxygen things on their fingers, in a few moments they are going to be able to use that fresh air in a way that will oxygenate their entire body. Their oxygen level will go up to 99%, 100%. Stories of monks meditating in the snow, creating heat. Sitting naked in the snow but staying warm. They're using the power of the breath. They're taking in oxygen, the same oxygen we all take in, but they've developed an ability to utilize that oxygen in a way that is very different from what most of us can do. In the same way, when you have a refined, and I wouldn't necessarily put Einstein there, we'll talk about him in a moment, but when you talk about Puja Swamiji and you talk about the enlightened masters, they have refined the internal organ, you can say, in such a way that they are living full of that consciousness, like the pranayama expert is living full of oxygen, living full of prana, which most of us cannot access. It's available for us, but we can't access it. When you take someone like Einstein, he's got a very, very developed brain, a very developed intuition. I'm not necessarily sure that I would put that on par on a consciousness level, though. I haven't studied his spiritual experiences enough to be able to say that. He was a genius, no doubt. He had intuition and insight, no doubt. He was able to see in the way that our rishis and sages could close their eyes and understand. He absolutely had access to that internal way of knowing. So consciousness is there for all of us. The question is, how are we going to access it? And that's where, lastly for now, obviously we could go on a month, but for right now, when you speak about the brain, does consciousness live only in the brain? Or does it live in every cell? Well, it doesn't actually live anywhere. It exists. If we are alive, if there is prana and life in us, the cells of our body have consciousness, like they have prana. However, they're not able to be aware of that. They don't also have a brain. Our brain is the medium through which we experience consciousness. And this is why when people have brain injuries, brain damage, they're changed. It's also the reason on a very simple level that when people get drunk or take drugs, they do really stupid things. And then the next morning they say, my God, I don't know what happened. It wasn't me. Well, if it wasn't you, who was it? Obviously it was you, but you were not conscious. The chemistry of your brain had altered in such a state, in such a way that you were not able to access consciousness. And so you acted in ways that were not you. And so what we know is that the very physical chemistry and electricity and function of the brain is actually that through which we are able to experience consciousness. This is why when we take to a spiritual path, not only don't we use alcohol and drugs, but we commit ourselves to a sattvic diet. Everything we eat goes into our bloodstream. The bloodstream is flowing in our brain. It's why we commit ourselves to not watching violence or listening to gossip. Because all of that enters the brain, everything we hear, everything we see, actually changes the chemistry and the electricity of our brain. It's how we process sight. When I look at you, my retina is getting just light and dark. It's getting shapes, it's getting movement, it's getting colors. But actually to understand that it's you requires a much higher level processing. Chemical, electrical, physical. And so consciousness exists everywhere, but the physical brain is required to be aware of our consciousness, to be conscious that we are conscious, and to be able to expand our consciousness. When we meditate and we experience an expanded consciousness, well, if you're brain dead, you're still one with all. That truth still applies to you, but you're not aware of it. It requires our physical brain to actually learn to be quiet enough to find that space between the thoughts, to chant the mantra, to ask ourselves, who am I? In a state of which our consciousness is able to expand and we're able to experience the divine.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Like Baldwin with People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I grew up loving circuses and other traveling animal shows, but it never occurred to me what life might be like for the animals. Training wild animals to do things they don't understand takes force. Routine discipline with a hook or whip with the heel of a boot shows the animal exactly who's the boss. Don't patronize animal acts. Please contact People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
757-622-PETA.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with inspiration and transformation. The question is it true that a guru can remove your karma or change your karma? Yes. And yet, remember that our karmic fruits, karma literally means action. When we speak usually about karma, we're talking actually about the fruits of the karma. The karma is what we've done. The fruit of that is what we get in exchange for that. What comes from that, what trees grow from the seeds we've planted. Now, most of us tend to think of those fruits as rewards or punishments. So you hear people say things like, oh my God, I must have done some really bad karma in order to be in this horrible situation. Or, oh God, this guy must have done some really good karma to be in that situation. But it's important to realize that God is not like Santa Claus. You know, we think about Santa Claus, and I think about the songs that we used to sing about, he knows if you've been good or bad, right? And so are you going to get what's on your list based on if you've been good or bad? Come Christmas morning, right? Well, if you've been good, you can expect all those presents. If you've been bad, maybe not so much. God is not like Santa Claus. We've imposed these constructs on God and on the universe. It's not a system of rewards and punishments. The karmic fruits that we get serve two purposes. Number one, they're quite literally the law of nature. Plant an apple seed, you get an apple tree. And they are that which we need at this particular intersection of time and space in our karmic packages to go closer to God. And so when something happens that's a challenge or that's difficult, instead of thinking, oh my God, what did I do to be in this situation? Think about it as in, how is this moment supposed to be something that's going to take me closer to my truth? Think about them as like layers of an onion that you're peeling. And ultimately the goal is not to have sweet layers of the onion, but ultimately the goal is to get these layers all peeled so that we actually are free from that cycle. So that's the karmic theory. Now, the role of the guru, of course, the guru can do anything. God can do anything. And yet, what you realize is, God put these laws into place. And so my favorite example of this is you think of the law of gravity. Now, if you're a really good person, a deeply spiritual person, and you decide to walk off the rooftop because you believe that you have wings and you can fly, or that God's going to give you wings on the way down, it's very unlikely that God is going to supersede his own law of gravity by making you float to the ground like a feather. Because these laws have been put in as laws of nature by the Creator. So has karma. So yes, the guru absolutely can change your karma, can remove karma. What I've seen, though, mostly is that the work of the Guru isn't so much, oh, let me be a magic wand for all your troubles. You know, like a parent who calls up the principal to tell them that someone's bullying you and that, you know, they really need to stop. But rather is going to be the one to show you how, in that challenge, you can take your next step closer to God. How you can see the light in this moment. So rather than being the magic wand that's going to turn your apple tree into an orange tree after you've planted an apple seed. And again, yes, the Guru can do it, and sometimes they do. There are absolutely, I have seen with Puja Swamiji, there's absolutely moments where he decides, okay, this is where we do that. But most of the time, the lesson and the teaching and the power of the Guru is much more to help you overcome your allergy to apples. To help you realize actually how wonderful apples are. To help you learn to make apple pie. To help you open your orchard to children who can come and pick the apples from your tree. Rather than just, oh, you wanted oranges, you made a mistake, okay, no problem, let me just redo that for you. That changing of the karmic fruit is not so much the apples to oranges, but is turning the bitter to sweet, not by changing, one vegetable into another vegetable, but actually teaching you how, in the face of that which you thought was bitter, how there can actually be sweetness.
This brings to a close this hour of inspiration and transformation. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad to be together with you all each week, and I look forward to being together again next Thursday, same time, on OMTimes Radio.